Hello, I'm Dimiter, and welcome to another session of Architectural Concept Design with Blender. In this lesson, we'll show how to import a satellite image, scale it to the correct size, and create a 3D context based on it. So if we raise this cube and go to File, Import, Images as Planes. If you do not see this menu item, I suggest you watch the previous video, which shows how to turn it on. So we find our location and you use the satellite image. If you want to follow through with the exact same context, this is Fitzroy Square in London. So to see it, we need to change the viewport shading to either texture or material. Place it as texture. And if we go to top view, Control 1 if you're using the UH Studio hotkeys. And at the bottom here we can see a scale that shows what 20 meters are like. Now if we check the size of this image at the moment, it's about 1 meter by 1.5 meters. And this thing here needs to be 20 meters. So scale it quite a bit up. And we have a light here, and that's why this thing is turning dark. So if I go to wireframe mode with Z, select the light and just move it quite up. Now if we change the viewport shading back to shaded, and actually we need to change that light to sun, there you go, to illuminate our scene better. Okay, so if we go to top view again, we see our satellite image nice and clear. And the scale is about 85 to 85 meters. That's okay. We can work with that. So now we'll put the cursor here with the right mouse button. If you've used My Settings, Shift A for add an object, or add a cube. It will make the cube 20 by 20 by 20 meters. So we can see how big that needs to be. Place the cube around there. And I'll move it 10 units up. That point is always in the middle of the object when we first create it. So when we have a cube that's 20 by 20 by 20, that's at exactly 10. So that's why I moved it exactly 10 units up. And now I'll go to edit mode by hitting tab, or again we can change to between edit and object mode from this menu here. Go to vertex select that vertex, and we'll snap our cursor exactly to it, because we'll use this point to scale the rest of the image. So mesh, snap, cursor to selected. Now you can see how it slightly moved it. Just to demonstrate again, I'll put the cursor far away, there for example. Mesh, snap, cursor to selected. Now it's exactly at that point. So back into object mode, Control 1 for top menu. If we don't see the object, Control 6, we'll zoom into it, and select the satellite image. Let me get rid of these items by just clicking on it. It will change the pivot point from median center to cursor. So what does that do? We see where the manipulator is right now at the object origin point, which is this orange dot. If we change the pivot point to 3D cursor, it moved the manipulator to there. So anything we do to this object, rotate, scale, it uses that point for the transformations. So this will make it much easier for us to scale the image exactly to 20 meters. So now in 3D cursor mode, as for scale, and we just scale the image up. So that looks correct. So now we have our image at the exact size that we wanted, and we can just erase this square. So let's move this with G for grab, and we'll put it near the center. I know that that point, my light is near the center, so that's why I'm putting it there. In fact, let's move the light, M for move to layer, and I'll put it in this layer. Right, so let's get started now with the context that we have our satellite image at the correct size. So Shift A, add plane. As you can see, it's quite small. S, scale. G for grab or move. Position it in this corner. So we'll do this block first. And remember to pan in an orthographic view without rotating is Shift plus middle mouse button. Middle mouse button only rotates. So Control 1 for top view again. So while still maintaining object mode, I'll just change the rotation to the medium point. So while still remaining in object mode, we'll rotate this plane. G for grab. And we'll just make it a nice angle. So perhaps 32. Great. So close this menu and toggles the property shelf on and off. T toggles the tool shelf on and off. Okay, so now if we go to edit mode, select edge. We want to move this edge exactly perpendicular to these side edges. So if we go here, the transform orientation for the manipulator, and change it from global to local, we have it exactly aligned. So now I just drag this edge and this edge, go to vertex, select this top vertex and move it down to scale this exactly the size that we would like it to be. And now if we go to edge mode, select this edge, Shift D for duplicate, put it here, E for extrude, and to lock it in the correct location, we press Z and then Z again, and we can see on the bottom it says along Z normal direction. Face mode, select this face, Shift D, move it to this block, Shift D again for this, Shift D, Shift D. And now edge mode, move this edge up, vertex, to slide this vertex down, and to slide this vertex up. Now we'll just move these a little bit further in, because this view is not exactly 100% on top, because here we can see a little bit of the fronts of the buildings, meaning that here it's a little bit angled on one side. Okay, so now we have our buildings as planes. So if I hit tab to go back into object mode, we zoom out, we see we don't have quite any buildings yet. So if we go to modifiers tab, which is this key here, add modifier, solidify, and we change this to 18 meters. It's going in the negative direction because the offset is -1. If we change the offset to 1, it goes in the positive. Now it looks significantly more than 18 meters. So if we zoom in the properties shelf, and we see the scale of the object is actually not 1. So what's happening is that the scale of the object is getting multiplied by the thickness. So instead of 18, it's 18 times 25. To make the scale of the object equal 1, let me just disable this first, zoom in. If we go to Object, Apply, Scale, and observe the numbers in the Properties shelf under Scale. Now they changed all to 1. So now if we enable this, they're exactly 18 meters high. Okay? So if I go to top view, the next thing I would like to add is the road. So if I click, let's say here, Shift A, Mesh, Plane. It's quite small, that's why we can't see it. Scale. Something around this is good. Maybe just a little bit more with S. And it's getting a little bit hard to see. So if we go to just plain solid mode, we can see what we're doing a little bit better. And I'll move the satellite image M to this lower layer here. So I can toggle it on and off easily by clicking Alt 1 and then Shift 1 to toggle it on and off. Okay, so if we go to top view, the next thing we'll do is draw the roads. So this guy, we'll just move him to the side for now. And we go back to textured mode. Oh, I'm afraid I moved the wrong thing. So let's move this object out of here. And I put my cursor somewhere around this area. Shift A for adding a new plane. And I believe the rotation is 32 degrees. If your object disappears, it's because these two objects are on the same plane. So if you just click around the area, it will appear. If you still can't find it, you can always go to wireframe mode to select it and go back to texture mode. Okay, so if I click on the context, and yes, the rotation is 32 degrees. So with this object selected, we'll change that to 32 as well. I'll close this window. Now, if we go to edit mode, make sure the manipulator is in local, and we can start moving the edges. So I'll select this edge, move it out, select this edge and move it out, select this edge, move it out, and then Shift D to duplicate this edge, G for grab or move. We'll put it around this area, and R for rotate 90. When we do the rotation, make sure you're exactly in top view so we can see it in this corner. Otherwise it will rotate based on the view that we are on. So we'll select this edge and this edge and press the W key, which has some special tools that are quite often used, and go to Bridge Edge Loops. And that bridges the two loops together. Now we can control the actual settings a little bit more. So if we enlarge the tool shelf by either hitting the T or this plus button here. And on the bottom of the tool shelf, we see Bridge Edge Loops. That is until we do something else, and then we see Translate. This gives us direct control to the previous operation that was executed. So now I did a transform and then an undo, and I cannot see any of it. So if I undo again, I have these two edges selected, W, Bridge Edge Loops, we can see a few options come up for bridging edge loops. So we'll change the number of cuts to 4. And we can see how this starts to smoothen out the radius here. Now if you want to make the radius a little bit smoother, we can change the smooth factor. So it looks to be right about that radius. And in fact, that road needs to be moved a little bit. So select again both edges, W, bridge edge loops, change the number of cuts, and adjust the smoothness. So now we can select this edge, E for extrude, lock it to the normal Z axis by pressing Z once and then Z again. And we move it out. Select this edge, E for extrude, Z, Z, place it there. Duplicate the edge and rotate it 90 degrees, and we'll do another bridge in this section. So Shift D, place it right around the middle there. Rotate, again make sure you're in top ortho when rotating, 90 degrees. Select both edges by shift clicking. Press the W button, bridge edge loops, and change the number of cuts. We'll continue to extruding, E for extrude, ZZ to lock the normal direction. Okay, so we have this road. Now we'll do the same thing here. I'll go to mesh, or rather face mode, and Control Tab is the same menu as these buttons, with the added advantage that we don't need to move the cursor all the way to the bottom menu and the top. So Control Tab, face, select. I'll select this face, Shift D for duplicate to put it there. Go to edge mode. Let's move this edge quite out. And it looks like the angle is slightly different in this area. So with this edge selected, Shift D to duplicate the edge, rotate 90 degrees by typing just the number 90 on the keyboard. Shift select both edges, W for the specials menu, bridge edge loops, change the number of cuts. E for extrude, ZZ to lock it along the normal direction. Okay, that road is a little bit bigger, but I won't worry too much about it as we're doing a quick concept design. I'll duplicate that edge that we have selected there, Shift D, put it here, E for extrude, ZZ to lock along the normal, duplicate this edge, rotate in the top view 90 degrees, let's move it out there, select both of these edges, W, bridge edge loops, change the number, E for extrude, ZZ, and we have our roads layout. So now if we go to object mode, what we want to do is keep this plane here at ground level at 0, 0, 0, or at least 0 in the Z direction, which it is at the moment. And the road cutouts are going to be slightly lower. So we'll give depth to both the ground plane and the roads. And then we use a boolean modifier to subtract the roads from this ground plane. So in top view, let's move this plane back into here. I'll shift click to deselect this bottom layer. Let's go to shaded mode. Z toggles wireframe or shaded. Toggles in between of them. And if we select the roads and the ground plane. Then we can go to view global loco just to see them. Now go to wireframe to see them easier. Select the ground plane. In the modifiers menu, we'll add a solidify modifier. And let's give it a thickness. Well, the scale is quite off as last time. So object, apply scale. That makes it 1. So now let's give it a thickness of 1. Maybe something larger, like 4. That works well. We select this object again. Double, make sure that the scale is 1. Solidify. And we'll say 0.15, which is about the thickness of the roads, or the step between the road and the sidewalk. So let's go to front view. And as we can see, this is our ground plane. This is 0, 0, 0, or z 0 in the z direction, lots of z's. And we're subtracting a little bit from that. So let's select the ground plane. Add another modifier to the ground plane, boolean. And we'll select the roads to subtract from. So this is plane 1. We can see the name here. And in fact, we can rename it by clicking this object display. We'll call it ground plane. Select the roads. And we'll call them roads boolean. So if we select the ground plane again, go to the modifiers menu, select the objects to execute the boolean operation with, and we see roads boolean. Now, since we're doing intersection, it just intersected both faces. So if we go to difference, it will erase some of those. Now this one is not erasing. If we go back into this and make the thickness, let's just exaggerate it and make it quite large. So if you observe when I turn them on and off, this object is extruding in the opposite direction than these two objects. So what's happening is that the faces that define in which direction to extrude into or to solidify into, their normals are facing the opposite way of these two. So the way to see this is if we go to edit mode, now we'll close this window, and we scroll down to shading, and here we have normals, and we turn on face normals. Let's make him larger. 1 unit, even larger. Let's make him 10 units. And we can see that the normals at these faces are facing up and the normals at these faces are facing down. So we're doing a negative offset. Therefore, these are going in the down direction, which is in the opposite of this, and this is going in the up direction, the opposite of these normals. So if we select, well, we can do a border select, and we select everything, or we can do it with A button. Then we go to mesh normals and recalculate outside. And sometimes that works when the objects are connected, but in this case, because they're separate objects, it doesn't work. So what we'll do is just select this object here, A deselect, select it all. By the way, a very useful shortcut, and a lot of these shortcuts I'll be reminding you throughout the lessons many times of what they are, because it's quite a few of them that are very useful, and upon learning them, workflow within Blender will be much faster. So A for deselect, A for selecting all. We want only these. We go to mesh normals and we'll flip the normals. Now they're facing the correct way. So if you go back to object mode, now we can see that we can tell that this is doing a calculation with this because it's also going in the opposite direction. So let's make this 0.15 again. Great. That's the wrong object. I had the ground plane selected, and we can see what object it is here. So in the ground plane, if I change this to well, we had a 4 meters, so let's just leave it at that, 4 meters. If you click select on the same place, it switches one selected item over the other that's exactly in the same place. So now I have the road selected, rows boolean. Change this thickness to 0.15. Now we have the roads exactly that location. Now we don't want to see these boxes that we're using to subtract with. So I'm going to move these. Well, first we need to be in global mode, because we're still in local mode. And when we're in local mode, we cannot see our layers. So view global local. And now we're back into our global view. So in here, with these rows that I don't want to see, I'm going to move them in this last layer here, which is the one that I typically use for construction geometry or any kind of geometry that I do not want to see, or have a layer that it's on, have it confused as one that I could see. So that's why I always put these things in the last layer. So M, and move it there. And I had both things selected. So I just want, yes, the road selected. M, move it to the last layer. And now if we do a very quick render preview, we can preview rendering in our viewport. We see darkness. Solid. So there's a few rendering shortcuts or settings that we need to create, so we can do very quick preview renders whenever we need to. So if we go to the World tab, change the horizon color to white. We'll give an ambient occlusion of 0.1. Environment lighting of 1. And fall off 1. So now if we try to do a shaded viewport, we can start to see things. Control 6 to zoom extends. So that unlocks what we see and we cannot see. If we zoom in there, we can see our road and we can see our buildings. Now let's just change that fall off to 0.5, 0.2. There you go. It just makes the edges a little bit more prominent. So again, so that's it for this lesson. Thank you very much and see you next time.